Very welcome. Please, if you can help me with your microphones, thanks so much. Great. Good afternoon, everyone. In the second part of our first journey going through our second Congress, Innovative and Intercultural Languages Teaching Approach. Very welcome, everyone, in that transmission, not only for the contestants and the participants from here, but also this has been also broadcasted to all Latin America and the world through YouTube. Very welcome to be here, and it's a pleasure to me to introduce our next keynote speaker. It's a pleasure and honor to us to having here Carrie Miller. She is from Escuela Politécnica Nacional, and she's going to introduce us in improving speaking beyond yes teacher, no teacher, and toward more sustained speech in the classroom. Carrie Miller has been a teacher and teacher educator for over 25 years. She has taught and trained teachers around Ecuador, working closely with various universities in Quito, Guayaquil, to design and write professional development courses for secondary and higher education professors. In addition to giving courses to university professors in Quito, Guayaquil, Ibarra, Cuenca, and other cities, she has also participated in various writing projects, including co-authoring the Uncover for Ecuador series for Cambridge University Press, as well as the National Curriculum of English as a Foreign Language for the Ecuadorian Ministry of Education in 2016. So it's a pleasure to introduce Ms. Carrie Miller. Carrie, we are pleased to have it in our second Congress.
Hello, everyone. Yes, it's such an honor for me. So thank you so much for the opportunity. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon, maybe good morning, depending on when or where you are watching this. So let me go ahead. Let's get started. I'm going to share my, let's see. My presentation. So as you could see, I'm going to be talking about speaking today. And for me, this is a very important subject and one that is very close to my own heart. I'm really interested in how we can make more opportunities for our students to speak, to not only improve their accuracy in speaking, I'm thinking in terms of more like fluency. So welcome to my session today. I want to talk a little bit about sustained speech. And so when I talk about sustained speech today, I'm thinking about speaking activities that go beyond 1 or 2 word answers or short sentences. So beyond the yes teacher, no teacher. So I observe a lot of classes, and I notice a lot of times in the classroom, teachers will often do speaking activities where the students, hello, can you hear me okay, everyone?
Yes, Carrie.
It's perfect.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right, just checking. Sometimes students, teachers do speaking activities, and you'll notice that students only get to answer 1 word or 1 sentence. And so what I'm really interested today is thinking about how we can get our students to do more sustained speech, where the teacher isn't talking most of the time, the students are actually doing the speaking. And even for beginner students, I would argue we can do this for all of our different levels that we teach. So the first question I have for you, and hopefully those of you who are in the Zoom session I know can participate in the chat, but I'd like you to answer this question in the chat. Why don't students participate in speaking activities? Because it's easy for me to say, oh, we should do more speaking in the classroom. But teachers will often say, well, students don't want to speak. How do I get my students to speak? So as we get started here, I'd like you to think a little bit about, maybe give some ideas in the chat about why you think your students, if this is true for you, that your students don't like to speak, why do you think they don't like to speak? Okay, so afraid of their pronunciation, yes. Fear is real. The fear of public speaking in any language, including your mother language, is one of the biggest fears that people have. In fact, I think people fear it more than death. So speaking in public is not easy, and in another language is very difficult. So they could be afraid, they could be shy, they don't want to make mistakes, there's a lack of confidence. Yes, exactly. Let's see if there are any other ideas here. Lack of vocabulary, perfect. So you guys already know, and I'm not surprised, because as teachers, we sort of intuit a lot of what we already know about the classroom. We know that our students are afraid, they're shy, they don't have anything to say. Someone here said, Verito says they're not motivated. Exactly, they might not like the topic, or they don't want to because they have, maybe it's not even the fact that they don't have vocabulary, but yeah, they're not familiar with the context, or they just don't want to for whatever reason it is. Okay, so let's see. So you guys guessed all of the common obstacles, which again, I'm not surprised, but if you look up the research, all the different papers and research out there about why students in the language classroom do not like to speak, you'll find the same answers over and over again. Fear of judgment, so afraid to make a mistake. Again, sometimes it's hard to think of what to say in your own mother tongue, and so it might be even more difficult in your second language to try to think like with spontaneous thinking, like trying to come up with something to say. Lack of confidence or maybe embarrassment, fear of making a mistake, which goes along sometimes with the fear of judgment, of course. So fear of making a mistake is like you don't want to make a grammar mistake or say something wrong, pronunciation, like pronounce a word wrong. Fear of judgment might be more than just accuracy, right? Fear of judgment might be what I have to say, I'm afraid other people won't like what I have to say, or they won't agree with me. So there are kind of two things going on in that sense. And then this hyper focus on accuracy. Sometimes I think students often think that in order to speak, they have to speak perfectly, or it's not worth their time and it's not worth anyone's time. Part of that, I think, is as teachers, we have given our students that conception, that perception, that accuracy is more important than anything. So that's something I will be addressing today. And then, of course, lack of vocabulary, limited proficiency. Obviously, a beginner student cannot be expected to speak for 10 or 15 minutes on a topic. They might only be able to speak for 30 seconds on a topic. And then one thing I added here that I think will be coming out a lot more as we start doing more and more research about education and language learning post-pandemic, as we're starting to kind of move into a post-pandemic phase, hopefully. I know it's still raging, but one of the things that I have noticed myself is that students don't have a lot to say. And this has always been a problem, but I think the pandemic has made this problem more obvious. Now we're not as restricted as we were, but I had a speaking class back in March, and it was so hard to get my students to say anything, because you would say, what did you do yesterday? Nothing. What did you do this weekend? Nothing. Where did you go? You couldn't go anywhere. We were in lockdown. So that, I think, has made it a little bit harder on students. They don't have a lot of maybe the same experiences that they had a couple years ago. So that may be affecting their ability to also just converse, right? They don't have a lot to say about things because not much has been happening. We've kind of been in a limbo for the last couple of years. Those are some of the things that are some of the obstacles that our students can have. So I found this quote from Maggie Kubiniova. Hopefully I pronounced her name correctly. She is a professor of language education at the University of Leeds, and I loved her. I will reference her white paper at the end. I'll show you my bibliography, my references. But I really love what she had to say about speaking. So one of the things that we need to really think about in terms of getting our students to say more than just yes, teacher, no, teacher, is getting them to feel safe in their speaking environment. And she says, I'm just going to read it. a safe speaking environment also means a space that treats the people who inhabit it as a cherished resource. And I love that expression, a cherished resource. Earlier today, a lot of the speakers and workshop presenters were talking about our students. As teachers, we love our students. We want the best for our students. And so we need to think of them as something we can cherish, right? A safe speaking environment engages students' identities, their hopes through the design of immersive tasks. It's responsive to students' agency by honoring topics that are close to their worlds, and it takes seriously the human relationships that are central to all communication. So we're always going back to that communicative element. What is the point of learning a language? It's to communicate. So we always have to keep that in mind. It's not to learn grammar. It's not to memorize vocabulary. It's not to pronounce everything correctly. It's not to fill out worksheets. It's to communicate with other people in real situations, in real scenarios. And finally, a safe speaking environment is one where feedback, whether focused on specific linguistic features or on meaning, so accuracy or fluency, is given in service of students' communicative accomplishments. So I really love what she has to say about speaking in general, sort of getting back to the basics, right? What do we want our students to do when they speak? We want them to feel safe. We want them to speak fluently and accurately, but at the same time, we want them to remember that speaking is communicating. It's not a linguistic exercise. It's a real life exercise. So what the World of Better Learning website from Cambridge University Press. I'm getting a notice that my internet is unstable. I apologize. But first, what I'm going to do is introduce an idea from an expert in the field. Then we'll talk about one of the steps that we can take based off of what the expert says and some of the tips that you can get from the different research or the other research that's out there. And then I'm going to pair it up with an activity that I have done with students. And I want you to remember today that the activities I did were actually with a higher level students. Those are the students I teach. But I want you to remember that every activity can be adapted today to a lower level. It will obviously, what will change is the language that students will use and maybe the time expectations. Again, a beginner can maybe only talk for 30 or 60 seconds, whereas an advanced speaker could maybe talk for 5 minutes. Okay, so that's kind of how I have it set up today. So we're gonna start off with Ben Goldstein. He's an ELT expert. He is an ELT author, and he has authored many different things, including Uncover and English Unlimited. And he says that we should champion conversation in the classroom. He says you don't have to stick to prescribed speaking tasks. Allow time for more chat, informal conversation, and incidental learning. Students will feel safer in such an environment. And I love this. It goes along with, I believe it was Diego's speech or talk this morning in his workshop about this idea that we don't have to follow every single thing the book says. A lot of speaking in the class can be incidental. It can be spontaneous. It can be informal. So speaking doesn't have to be this prescribed activity that has to go a certain way in the English language classroom. In fact, I would say maybe it shouldn't be like that too much. The first tip then is supportive feedback. So not to focus only on accuracy. And I think this is a mistake that we often make in the classroom is we're often telling students they're speaking about something and we are constantly correcting them. Everything that they say is a correction. And the problem is that students will be afraid to speak if they feel like they're constantly being judged. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Sometimes students also say, I want you to correct everything I say because I don't want to make a mistake. But the reality of the fact is that when we learn a language, we make mistakes. And mistakes are really important. They're really important for being able to speak. It's part of the practice, right? Also, we should make sure that feedback is more about the support, more about the real message than just the accuracy. And this is a common thing that I see in the classroom. And I say it's unfortunate. I know that the teachers mean well, but I see it a lot. For example, a student will say something that is maybe shocking or terrible or really sad, or really exciting or really surprising. And they might make a mistake when they say it, and the teacher corrects the English rather than responding to the message behind it. So a typical thing I've seen, not exactly, but something similar would be like, you come in on Monday morning, the teacher says, "Oh, how was your weekend?" And the student says, "Oh, teacher, I'm very sad. My dog died. My dog died." And the teacher says, "I am very sad. My dog died," past tense, died. And so they give this message to the student that the first thing that's the most important thing about speaking is being accurate, rather than saying, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry that your dog died this weekend," and maybe not even correcting that message, because I think it would be obvious to most of us that the main thing there is the communicative message, right? Not the grammar. So we need to think about that. How can we make our feedback supportive? How can we not just focus on the accuracy? Obviously, we do want to give some feedback on accuracy. Probably the most, I think if you read it, all the research says that most of the time the accuracy should be, we should focus on accuracy when students are not, like, you can't understand them. The message is not clear. Anyway, so something that we need to think about. I would challenge all of you, if you're in this moment, but we've had a year and a half or maybe more of being online. And I would challenge all of you, go back to one of your recorded classes and watch how you as a teacher give feedback to students when they're doing speaking. And if you notice that you are overly concentrating on accuracy, then you might want to think a little bit more about how your feedback can be supportive rather than just focusing on the grammar or the vocabulary or the pronunciation. So one of the things that I like I said, I tried to pair up these different tips with activities that I have actually done with my students. And this is an idea that I did a few months ago. What I noticed is my students, when we would just be talking about anything, and they would always bring up the topic of animals and animal rights, especially. They were very interested in rescue animals and fostering pets like dogs, street dogs, animal rights, animal protection. And this was always coming up. And so we decided one day to just talk about animals. It was not part of the topic. It was not part of the book. It wasn't part of the curriculum. But I just noticed that this was something that just got them very excited. They really wanted to talk about it. They didn't seem self-conscious when they would bring up these topics. And so we just did an activity where they had to think about different animals and what animals can do to help humans and which animals are helpful. They decided that all animals are helpful. They were very into animals. You can see here that they even said they're a source of food. So that's very helpful to humans. But anyway, so I want to point out that even though we worked on Jamboard, this is Google Jamboard, even though we worked on Jamboard, the majority of the activity was actually speaking. So they were in breakout rooms, they were talking about different animals and how the animals helped us, and then they had to record some of their ideas on their Jamboard to come back later and discuss them as a class and compare and contrast the different things that they found. And you can see that one group decided to bring some pictures into the equation, and another one, the other group decided not to. Anyhow, this is an example of that idea of kind of doing something spontaneous. So they were just always talking about animals. So one day we're just let's continue talking about animals. This is something you guys really enjoy and are really passionate about. So Maggie Kubinova again, she says, as her main suggestion is make speaking the star. She says, time for speaking means time for language learning. So the next tip is about time. And the reason I put this in here is because if you talk to teachers a lot of times and you say, well, why didn't you do more speaking in your class? Well, the teacher will often say, well, I only have 35 minutes. I only have 60 minutes. I only have 120 minutes. It doesn't matter how long they have. A lot of the times the teachers will say, we don't have time to do speaking. Speaking takes so much time. So it's true. It's totally true that speaking takes time. What I'm hoping today is after my talk, you will decide that the time we spend on speaking is more important than any of the time that we spend on anything else in the classroom, because speaking can do so much for our students. So if we agree with what I'm saying, then we need to dedicate more time to speaking as teachers. We need to pay attention to where speaking occurs in our lessons. Often you'll find, and this is the reason, this is how the textbooks are set up, but just because the textbook says this does not mean we have to follow the textbook 100%. But usually the textbook will have the grammar first and then some practice with the grammar, and then we get the students to speak using that grammar or that vocabulary. The problem is that if we leave speaking till the end, inevitably we'll almost always run out of time. So my question to you is, where are you putting the speaking in your class? If you, like me, agree that speaking is really important, then I challenge you to try to put your speaking at the beginning of class. Do the speaking first. It can be spontaneous speaking, it can be more structured. But if we put the speaking first, we will make sure that we're not rushing it at the end or saying, okay, guys, we only have 5 minutes left of class. Let's get into our groups and talk about what we just saw, or let's do the conversation activities. So that's part of the timing. Also, we know that putting together an activity, the students need to let students have a moment. It can be 30 seconds, but let them have a moment individually or in very small groups like pairs to think about what they might want to say before they have to say it to the bigger group or to the whole class. We need to give students, that's the prep time, right? Give them a little bit of prep time so they can think about what they want to say. You could even tell them the day before, tomorrow we're going to talk about animals. So think about what you want to say. So giving priority to speaking above everything else. And some of the questions that I think we can ask ourselves as teachers is time for speaking well spent? Do you agree with that sentence? Because if you're leaving the speaking till the very end of your class or saying, oh, today we didn't have time to do speaking, then maybe you believe that speaking is not well spent. And if you don't believe speaking is well spent, then one of the things you can think about is, why do you believe that? Do you believe it's not well spent because students don't do it, because they don't say anything, because they make too many mistakes? I think we need to analyze that answer individually, each one of us, if that's how we are feeling about speaking. Also, this idea of whether or not a discussion can have any value in and of itself. So if we're following a textbook, we often think that the speaking part is the part that comes after the practice or the guided practice of the grammar or the vocabulary. But the question is, can speaking just be its own activity? Does it always have to be paired with something? I would say no, but that's a question that I will leave up to you to decide that answer. But I think if you say no like me, then you're probably showing that speaking is really important. It doesn't have to be tied to a grammar point. It doesn't have to be tied to a vocabulary activity. Okay, so what the activity that I paired up with this idea here is an activity that's actually about narrating stories. So this is kind of, I wanted to show this activity because you can see that what the students had to do is they had some pictures and they had to tell the story of the picture. And I actually divided it into a couple different stages, which you cannot see here because of the time and the space. But the first thing they had to do is they had, like, let's say they had 3 pictures. They had to choose their favorite picture in groups. And then they had to talk about their picture, but not just talk about the story. They just had to mention some of the things. So they had to annotate the picture. They had to put like vocabulary words or verbs that came to mind when they saw the picture. So they got to sort of prep a little bit about the picture, think of the vocabulary that might go with some of the pictures, ideas, things like that, the feelings they got when they saw the picture. Then they had to talk about what they thought was happening during the picture, what was happening right before the picture was taken, and maybe what happened right after. So they did that in their groups as well. And then finally, as a final product, what they had to do is they had to go to Padlet and they had to write the story of their picture. So again, I paired the speaking activity with writing because, as we're going to see in one of my other tips, often focusing on the speaking can be a little too abstract for students. Like, they think about the speaking too much. So it's good to give them a task of something that they can do. So with their speaking activity, they had to produce a story and they had to write it out. They worked on it in groups, and one person typed it while the other ones gave feedback, and I went in and out of the groups listening to them talk. But that was the idea here, is that they were narrating the story, and they did it in a couple different stages. And we didn't just start with the writing. We did it as speaking first, and then we wrote it down. The next ELT author I have is Carrie Jones. She also is an author of Uncover. She has written, I think, English Unlimited, some other books. But her suggestion is speak through scaffolding. And she says that we should encourage learners to build on each other's development in order to get the right words out by working through various phrases until they crack it. And when they do, celebrate these moments of breakthrough. So what I get from her idea is, the first thing is scaffolding, very important for our students, especially lower levels, but even higher level students can really benefit if we scaffold our speaking activities correctly. Sort of like what I did here, where I said, first, we just talked about vocabulary and feelings and emotions. Then we talked about what happens first, second, third, or pre, during, post picture. And then we finally went ahead and did our writing. That's kind of the idea of scaffolding, right? So she also here in her quote kind of builds off of this idea of this collaboration, right? When we have students working and speaking together, we should be encouraging them to be building meaning together, not competing against one another, who's better, who's worse, who made more sense, who's funnier, but actually building off of what other people say. So I think that's something that we are missing a lot in the classroom. Often students will say, I had a student once in a class who said that she was a professional salsa dancer, and the students were so used to a teacher-centered classroom that nobody said anything. And so I was really surprised, because I think in real life, if your friend came up to you and said, oh, I'm a professional salsa dancer and I just won an award, then you would be really surprised. You would say, wow, I can't believe it. I didn't know you did salsa dancing. But students can get so stuck in this idea that the teacher is the only one who gets to decide when they talk and how they speak, that they might not even respond in that natural set. We want to make sure the activities we're giving our students the opportunities to interact in a positive way and creating rapport between our students. And that's not always easy to do, but it's almost impossible to do if we never do group work, if we never do collaborative learning. Some of the things that we can do if we want our students to get better at working together and talking in a more natural way with each other, creating that rapport with each other, is they can do things like creating collective group narratives. They can do things like creating a newsletter for their class, for their city, for their school. They can do story sharing, creating a group chronicle. One thing that my son has just started college. They are virtual at the moment. And his class is not a language class, but one thing that his professor does every day, every time they enter class, they have class once a week. But every time they enter class, she has them say the high of the week and the low of the week. There's only 7 people in the class, but still, every single person, including herself, has to say what was the best thing about their week and the least best thing. And it can be silly. It can be, the best thing was that I ordered pizza on Friday night, and the worst thing is that I didn't get to sleep in on Saturday morning. I woke up too early. But that sort of idea of generating that rapport, that interaction between students about their real lives, it's really important to help students feel comfortable in a classroom and comfortable making mistakes in front of each other and sharing ideas. Part of this can happen, as we can see in my second tip here, modeling the vision through the teacher's own values. So if the teacher values speaking and the teacher values that spontaneous interaction, students will also value it. Our students often mirror what we are giving to them. So this isn't always true, but it's often true, that if my students are reluctant to speak, maybe I'm sending off some sort of message to them that speaking isn't valued. I don't value speaking, or I don't care about what they have to say. So I might want to think a little bit about my own practice. What am I doing? Or maybe other students in the class are giving that message. So you need to maybe sometimes analyze who are speaking in and where some of the tension might be coming from. I know a lot of classes nowadays use WhatsApp groups. All of those things can really create some positive peer interaction that will help later in the classroom when students need to do speaking. So those are some really interesting ideas. I think social media is really great right now. My last couple of classes were really into their WhatsApp groups, and even on the weekends, they would send each other jokes. Everything was in English, surprisingly, almost everything. But they would send each other pictures on the WhatsApp group of like, oh, guess what I'm doing today? I just got a coffee, or things like that. Okay, so the task idea that I had for this idea of creating that rapport, this sort of group interaction where students feel that they're contributing to the group in a really positive way, is an activity that you can follow this on social media, like on Instagram. It's called Day in the Life. And it's a memory keeping activity that some people do. Photographers sometimes do it as well. The idea of Day in the Life is that you record a day in your life, a typical day in your life. And it doesn't have to be super important. It doesn't have to be the best day ever. It can be, in fact, it's even more interesting sometimes when it's just a normal, every run-of-the-mill, everyday kind of every day. And the idea here is that what the students had to do is they got like homework where they had to take 5 pictures of the day before class. So like it was on a Monday. So on Sunday, they had to take 5 pictures of their day, anything they were doing. So you can see here, I know the pictures are a little small, but one student took a picture of her son who was sleeping in bed. Some students took a picture of their dog eating breakfast. Some people took pictures of their breakfast or their lunch. Can't quite see exactly what's here. I think somebody was doing something at work, so they took a screenshot of a presentation that they were giving at work. And then they came in the next day, they shared their days, and they came up with their group day. So they sort of invented a perfect day for their group using the things that they actually did and some of the pictures. This was a higher level. It was done in a very simple way, but the students loved this activity. They thought it was really fun to share their normal everyday pictures, a picture of what they have for breakfast. Doesn't seem that exciting, but it really created a sense of camaraderie in the classroom. And students, even when I talk to them this day, they'll say like, oh, I really like that activity. That was really fun to do. So anyways, this is an idea of how we can create that positive group interaction. They're sharing something they did, and then at the same time, they're creating something new with their own ideas, and everybody got to contribute their ideas. Leslie Hendra, another ELT author, says that we should get them absorbed in the task, not the talking. So this is often said about grammar, that we shouldn't concentrate on the grammar. In this case, we shouldn't concentrate on the idea that they are speaking, but we should concentrate on the task, right? So pair and group work helps to normalize the sound of talking in the classroom so students don't feel focused on. Before you know it, they're throwing themselves into activities and talking without even knowing it, not worried about how they sound to their peers or teachers. So this is, I think, the main thing we all want as teachers is that moment, that perfect moment, that golden moment when suddenly all of our students are engaged, interacting, and having fun and communicating without even thinking, oh, by the way, I'm in English class, so I should use this grammar, or I shouldn't make this mistake. It's not super easy to do, but it's easier to do the more students get to practice, and the better we set up our speaking tasks. So how can we make an immersive task? We have to, first of all, use tasks that are communicative. So I often talk about this in my classroom with my teacher students, but having students describe a picture, this picture is not so interesting that I have up on the board, the sunset. But if I had a picture like one of the other pictures I had over here, the elephant going through the streets of India, if I just told students, describe that picture, it's not super immersive. It's not very interesting because everybody's looking at the same picture. We already know what's in the picture. So if somebody says there's an elephant, the elephant is running through the crowd, people are watching the elephant from the balcony, that's not going to be so engaging for our students. They're going to be focused on that idea of accuracy and the idea that this is an activity for my English classroom. But if we change it up a little bit, then we can make activities that are more engaging for our students, because they don't think about the fact that they're practicing their grammar or their vocabulary. They have to try to think of a different activity. For example, solving a problem. All right, what do you do with this elephant? How did they get the elephant off of the street? Discussing an issue. All right, maybe this elephant came from the circus. Do you believe that circuses should exist? Should zoos exist? What do we do with all of our animals that are in the circus or in the zoo? Narrating stories, which is what I actually did with that other picture. Sharing opinions and experiences, and actually making things like creating a poster or creating, if we're in the physical classroom, it's a lot easier. Students can create a poster, but if we're in the digital classroom, they can also just create, something on Canva or on Poster My Wall. They can create a digital pamphlet with their ideas. So getting them to sort of take that focus off of the speaking, instead of just saying, let's talk about it, say, okay, discuss the issue of zoos and make a poster that gives people, that you can put on the streets of Quito, that tells people your opinion about what we should do with the zoo. Do you want more people to go there? Do you want to get rid of it because it's against animal rights? How do you feel? So the task activity that I have here, although I think by now you can probably see that the tasks are interlapping. A lot of these tasks probably have more than one of the tips or one of the ideas attached to it. But one task that I used where I felt my students got really immersed in the task and they kind of forgot that they were doing English class was travel. So my students were young adults and they were very interested in seeing the world, especially during the pandemic when we're sort of stuck in our houses. So they were all kind of dreaming of their perfect place to go. So I just took some pictures from different parts of the world. They had to choose the place that they would like to visit and say why. That part they did individually, and then they had to get into groups, people who thought the same thing. So like here, this picture of that's like, looks like ice. I think there were salt pools. Sandra, Lore, Diana, Leonela, they got into a group together and they had to talk about why they chose that picture. And then they had to find out where that picture was from and create a travel itinerary. So imagine they got to go to this place. What would they do? What advice would they give to people who need to go there, etc.? So it's a typical task that you'll often find in a textbook. But the idea here is that, if students are really interested in this, then this is something they might get really immersed in. I doubt very much that if I had 8-year-olds, this would have been a very good topic. So again, we have to think about our students' interests, their needs, the environment that we're in. I think this was more successful because we are in a pandemic and students were just stuck in their homes. It was right around the time when they even told us we couldn't go out on the weekends. So students were feeling very depressed, which we'll see in the next activity as well. Okay, my final tip as we're finishing up here. Catherine Odell, another ELT author. She says, make speaking activities felt and not forced. And I think this goes along with pretty much everything we have said today. If students feel like talking, they're going to speak. So creating a balance between a spontaneous activity and giving them time for preparation so they don't feel like it's too spontaneous, and supporting this with interesting and relevant topics that they will want to talk about. So this is a little tricky because every group is different. There are no two classrooms that are the same. Not every group maybe loves to talk about animals. Not every group wants to travel. And so how do I know this? Well, I have to get to know my students. I have to pay attention when we are in class, the different things that they bring up, the things that they seem to want to talk about, the different, when I say what's your ideal vacation? I need to pay attention to the things that they say and try to use ideas from their own lives that I can try to help them relate to. So, it brings us to our last topic, which I think we all know this. We need to use engaging topics. And again, sometimes it's easier said than done, but how do we know what's going to make our students excited? I can guess, I can assume, I can say, oh, my students are young adults at the university. This is what they want. My students are Polytechnica students. They would be interested in this. But that's not always going to be true. The only way I can really know is by letting my students tell me, what is it that you're interested in? And so quite often in my classes, I'll start, the first week of class or so, I'll give them even a survey and say, what are some topics you're interested in? What are some things you like? But even when students report that they're interested in something, I'll often notice that something else will come up. And that was the case of the animals, the group that really liked animals. They all said they were interested in talking about music and travel and books and the news and things like that. But I noticed that when I actually used the topics they said they were interested in as speaking activities, they didn't always get very excited about it. But as our class went on, I noticed that they were super interested in animals. And so once I started bringing in animals, in fact, those were the topics I got them to be able to talk about more than their self-reported interests. So using their lives and their experiences as input is really important. We would often do things like, what did you read this weekend? What did you see on the internet? What video games did you play? Tell us something interesting about a video game that you like. And sometimes it was Candy Crush. It didn't have to be something super involved or super important, but students loved sharing that part with each other. And they often would come back the next week and say, oh, that group that Juan told us about, I listened to some of their music and it was really interesting. I really liked them. So trying to find those topics that students are passionate about, it can take a little bit of time, but it means the teacher has to be in tune, right? You have to be attuned to what students are saying, what they're doing, what they're paying attention to, what they seem engaged in. And then the more we can relate it to the real world, the better. So students actually feel like it's something worth their time. Students enjoy learning more when they are in charge of their own learning. So letting them choose sometimes the topics when the motivation comes from within. So again, that can be hard to tap into, but once you get in there, it's a really, really great feeling. And giving them opportunities to help learning their own. Again, giving them choices, saying, what do you want to talk about today? Or that this weekend that surprised you. That's all you have to do. And also their actions are self-initiated. So when students want to speak, as teachers, we need to go with it. Instead of saying like, oh, I'm sorry, we don't have time to talk about that right now because we have to do some grammar. We'll talk about it later. Well, that later will never come, or the student won't be interested in saying it later. So we need to try to take advantage of those moments when we can. That doesn't mean that we never teach grammar, that we never do the textbook, but recognizing those important moments where real communication is happening is much more powerful than trying to do like a conversation activity at the end of a practice exercises, right? So I think that's something that as teachers, we can try to pay attention to. So this is the last task idea that I had to kind of go along with this engaging topic. As I've already said, this task actually came recently during the pandemic, in one of the moments when it was the most, when we were in the strictest lockdown time, and my students were really stressed. And it was a typical thing where every Monday I'd come in and say, oh, what did you do this weekend? How did it go? No, teacher, we didn't do anything. I stayed at home. I didn't do anything. I'm bored. They were really, really, and they said that they were stressed. So I ran with it. It was something from their real lives that they were feeling right now. And it might be something I'd never be able to use again with my students. But at this point in time, I noticed that this group needed to do something about stress. So we did some speaking activities, and this was over the course of a couple of days. It didn't have to be like a huge, like 1 hour long thing, but we did some times where they would have to say what was stressing them out in their lives. And I always mentioned that they should mention something that they can share with the class, nothing too personal or private that they were not willing to talk about. But they would share one thing that was kind of that they were stressed about or worried about. And then after we, got an opportunity a couple different days to talk with different people about the stress that they're having right now in their lives. They had different groups, different partners. Then they got into groups and they had to try to figure out, after hearing from some of the different classmates, the different stresses that they were having, they had to find some stress busters. And they got to go on the internet, they got to do some research together, try to figure out how can we solve some of the problems in our class. And my students were university students, and a lot of them were stressed out about exams, remote classes, being online for long periods of time, not getting enough sleep, things like that. So of course they were focusing on those types of things. So some of them you can see, we used Padlet to put their ideas. The groups put all of their ideas together. So this is all of the different groups. Some of them, they just put ideas. Some of them added a video. Some of them added pictures. So it was really interesting. And I think the students really, it actually helped them de-stress a little bit because they got some ideas for their stress. They got to talk a little bit about what was bothering them. And they got to do something kind of fun at the end, like find a video that stopped their stress or find a picture that helped them. So these were some of the ideas that I came up with to kind of go along with these different tips. And as I'm finishing up here, but Maggie Kubinova, again, I'm going to end with one of her quotes as well. And I love this quote so much. For me, it's really powerful. She says that making time for speaking in the classroom can trigger a virtuous circle of students' engagement. It allows them to taste, I love this term, to taste their L2 future, their second language future, through meaningful speaking experiences. And this in turn fuels their motivational engine to keep up their language learning efforts, not only in speaking tasks, but also more generally. And if you go on to read her paper, she talks about this idea that students who felt more confidence in speaking and felt like they were getting things done in productive language, spoken language, they actually wanted to learn more vocabulary. They wanted to learn more grammar. They wanted to find out ways to say things that they couldn't say before. And so it got them into this virtuous circle. Anyways, I love this idea. It's a really interesting paper. You can see here the references. Here's her paper. It's on the Cambridge University Press blog there. It was so interesting how she talks a little bit about how students, like the tasting their L2 future actually made them just happier language learners and really increased their motivation. They got to see themselves as an English speaker. And I think it makes sense. If we aren't practicing speaking in the classroom, our students will never see themselves as a speaker because they're not getting the practice they need. So that is my presentation for today. I know we have some time for questions. Thank you everyone so much. I don't know if there are any questions at the moment.
Well, let me check actually if in our YouTube chat there are a couple of more.
Thank you. I see one in the Zoom classroom as well. Catherine says, how can we manage speaking activities in large classrooms? That's a whole nother, probably a whole entire Congress. We could talk about that. I think the main thing is don't be afraid to do it. You never can manage it and you'll never get good at managing it if you don't do it. That goes not just for the students, but also the teachers. I can't get good at managing my large groups if I never give myself the opportunity as a teacher, as a professional, to get good at managing my large group. In large classrooms, the best thing to do is group work. I normally think that groups should not be more than 5 for a speaking activity. 3 to 5 is pretty much ideal. Obviously, if I have 50 students, I probably want groups of 5. If I have 30 students, maybe groups of 3 might be too little because I'll have too many groups. That's something that I think you have to experiment a little bit with. I know that teachers don't always like to experiment in the classroom, but that's really the only way to know what works and what doesn't. And also, we have to recognize that when we do speaking, there's a lot of noise. And there's going to be because everybody's speaking, but that's a good thing. The worst thing is to do a speaking activity and it's really quiet. We don't want that to happen either. So I don't know, Andres, if you have a question from the YouTube group.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I was reading a couple of comments there. The first one comes from Maritza Zapata. Let me have a look. Well, okay. It says maybe they were speaking about what they find difficult in especially shy students. In your experience, what they find difficult, the moment that they have to produce oral skills?
I think it depends a lot on the student. because we need to know, are they shy in Spanish as well, like in their native language? Are they shy because they're afraid to give an opinion that they think might not be popular? Are they shy because they don't want to make a mistake? So I think that's the first thing, is to try to determine what kind of shyness we're talking about. But I think the best way to deal with shy students is pair work. So rather than doing...
Oh, your microphone, Carrie, it went off.
I think I touched something, sorry. my computer was very touchy. Okay, so doing something like a think, pair, share is a really great thing for shy students. So give them 30 seconds to think about their answer individually, quietly, then put them with a pair, with a partner, and let them tell their partner what they think. And then maybe they can go, pairs can get together with other pairs and do it as a group, and then maybe do it as a whole class. It's really hard. I mean, it can be really hard for a shy student, but it's really hard for even a shy student. If I'm working with only one other person, it's really hard to continue being shy, because it's going to be really awkward if nobody says anything. But I think that, giving students language prompts, giving them ideas of how they can start the topic. So if you say, like, how do animals help us? Then maybe you put on the board, I think blank animal is good for humans because they, and then blank. So they kind of have like a sentence structure maybe to help them, that can help them feel a little more confidence in that they just have to think about the idea. They don't have to think about the language necessarily. Hopefully that helps answer a little bit that question.
There is another one from Edison Santa Cruz. He said, which is a good time to assess oral accuracy?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think that I don't think there's necessarily a good or a bad time. What I think I'm trying to say is that we need to make sure that in our speaking class, in our speaking activities, we're not only assessing accuracy, right? So we have to be careful as teachers that we don't think that every single speaking activity needs to be assessed in terms of accuracy. And usually, in teacher preparation courses, they'll say, well, when you're doing your planning, you should decide this activity, this speaking activity, I'm going to be working on fluency, so I'm not going to worry about the accuracy so much. And in this case, I am going to work, in this activity, I will be looking at accuracy. And you can even let your students know. Say, okay, we're just going to talk right now. And then maybe later in the class or the next day, you say, okay, I'm going to be paying attention to your grammar right now. I'm going to be paying attention to the use of past tense when you speak. But I think we need to have a balance. And so we need to be careful. If I'm the type of teacher that's always assessing accuracy, then my students might be really afraid to speak. Not because they're afraid of me necessarily, but sometimes they're afraid of themselves. They don't want to make those mistakes. So I think we need to determine ahead of time, make sure we have a good balance, and also try to make sure that the activities that we are assessing accuracy with, we're also thinking about the fluency. So it's not only about accuracy. Maybe we can find that balance. But it's a hard thing. It's definitely hard, especially if you have a 45-minute class. That's hard to do all of that in a 45-minute class, in addition to the other million things that we have to do. So I think it merits thinking about ahead of time. Decide.
Definitely. Here in our teachers chat, how to increase support in a group?
So I think the best way to increase rapport is doing personalized activities, getting students to talk about themselves, their opinions, their ideas, to share moments together. It can be, there is always one or two students that maybe don't mesh with anybody in the classroom, and it can be difficult to do because they might just be a difficult person, or they might not feel like they have anything in common with each other. So creating activities that can create that commonality, I think, is really important. Like the activity I talked about called A Day in the Life. Even if you had teenagers with adults, their days might look really different. But when they came together to create the ideal day for the group, then everybody maybe gets to have a say of what they get to do, or, you know, what the perfect day might look like for our group. So everybody feels represented. But yeah, I think rapport, I think that one of the main ways to create rapport in the classroom is to get students to work in groups with different people, get them to know each other. They have to know each other's names, and they have to work together. They have to have common tasks that will help them feel like they're solving problems together. And that's, I think, the best way.
Thanks so much, my dear Carrie, as you have been really wide topic. However, you have given us really good topics and tips in special in order to make our classes coming, like some of the teachers were saying, coming out from the traditional classes, and also giving us the chance to make it. Because most of the time are underlying assumptions about what we have heard, but we haven't tried it before. So we would like to say thanks a lot to my dear Carrie to be here in our second Congress in order to give us that important topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was great to be here. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. So, guys, by the way, here, we're going to give us 1 or 2 minutes to prepare our next presentation. So, if Diego can help us, by the way, with some videos while we are preparing the next one.
El Instituto Académico de Idiomas de la Universidad Central presenta la segunda edición del Congreso Innovative and Intercultural Languages Teaching Approaches, un espacio para socializar tendencias y prácticas relacionadas a la innovación e interculturalidad aplicables a la enseñanza de lenguas. Entre varios de nuestros temas tenemos la educación en tiempos de COVID-2019, enfoques actuales de la enseñanza de idiomas y muchos temas más. Los esperamos el 10, 11 y 12 de noviembre del 2021. Este evento lo organiza el Instituto Académico de Idiomas con el respaldo de Revista Científica Cronos y está avalado por la Dirección de Desarrollo Académico de la Universidad Central del Ecuador. Los esperamos. Bienvenidos todos.
Welcome.
Ali Shamushka.
Bienvenue.
Benvenuto. Konniwada.
Thanks. So everyone is welcome to be here in our second part by the presentation, and that's so good. Okay, Fabian is there. So let me introduce him, guys. Just a second to prepare.
Thank you, Andres. Just to mention that the attendance link is already there, so please can you help us out adding that?
Okay, good. So, by the way, our next presentation is given by Fabian Chavez, Professor Fabian Chavez. He's from Education First Ecuador, and kind of engaging topic. I can't wait to listen to that one too. Keep it simple. I'd like to introduce Fabian, telling you that he has a degree in English teaching at UTPL. He has also is a CELTA qualified teacher, University of Cambridge, is Google Educator Level A2, certified in online teaching by Cambridge Assessment English, social studies for Ecuador, and C2CFR. Fabian has 20 years of teaching experience, and he's going to share us his experience in that word, keeping it simple. Fabian, very welcome to be here with us.
Thank you very much for that lovely introduction, and it's really nice to see so many people here. I know this is an international congress, and I'm pretty sure there are people from different cities and countries maybe. So I would like to know where you guys from. For the people who are on YouTube, you can also let us know where you're coming from. And today I'm going to talk about promoting active learning in the classroom through the implementation of learning centers. So the idea is that by the end of this session, we will be able to come up with a clearer picture of how to implement these learning centers and encourage our students to develop their skills, as well as promoting active learning. All right, so here, I have something for the people who are joining me on Zoom, and I would like to share this link, and this is the handout we're gonna use. For the people who are following on YouTube, I'm also sharing the link so that you can open it. So just let me share it in the chat box. Could you please open that link? And if possible, the first thing you'll need to do is to go over Archivo and then find the option to download the file. It's gonna be easier for you to keep this material. All right, so the topic of today is active learning and how we're gonna use learning centers to help our students be more active and take more, get to grips with their own learning. In this first handout, I'm going to divide the different rooms. So we will start with activity B. Activity A is for you guys to join a group on Telegram if you want to leave comments or questions that I can answer later. But in activity B, we have a link that will take you to this Padlet. And here you have different questions for you to discuss in breakout rooms. Read the question, take some time to come up with ideas, and then scroll the bar, and you will find the answer key. All right, go through all the questions in about 3 minutes. That's our first activity. In the second activity, there is another link, and that will show you this Jamboard. Each slide has a different room. So I will stay here with room number 1, and we are going to work on this average retention rate. The idea is for you to know how this pyramid works, and we will discuss that later when we finish the activity. And in activity C, there is another link for you to open and come up with the categorization of some learning activities that can help us promote active learning in the classroom and out of the classroom. Because of time, we're going to do these 3 activities in breakout rooms at once. So in parentheses, you can see the times, 3 minutes for the first activity, 2 minutes for the second and third activity. If you guys are invited to be in breakout room number 1, please stay here in the open session with me. All right? Please give me a reaction on Zoom if you are ready to begin. Open the link. Remember, if you are invited to breakout room number 1, stay here. Give me a reaction on Zoom if you're ready. So I'm going to open the breakout rooms now. I see there are people joining the Telegram group. Feel free to participate there too. Hello, Ana Maria. How are you? Feel free to open your microphones, guys, and your cameras, because this is going to be a hands-on session. So, Ana Maria, are you there? Yeah, room 1, stay here, please. I have Ana Maria, Andrea, Angel, Carlos, Diego, Inés. Diego, are you there? Okay, never mind. I'm going to share my screen here. And let's start with this activity. So here we have our first question is, what is active learning and what does it involve? So guys, I would like you to use the chat on Zoom, or feel free to open your microphones, turn them on, and share your ideas with me. Stefano, hello.
Hi.
Could you please tell us, what do you think about active learning?
I think that it's kind of learning by doing something, and so it's not passive learning, but you do something, and doing that you learn.
Thank you. Very good. Nicolas, any ideas what does active learning involve? I have also some ideas here in the chat box. Thank you, Stefano. I have Angelique. I don't know if your microphones are off. Evelyn, can you please tell us what's your idea? What does active learning involve?
Well, I believe that active learning involves the students doing the majority of the work in which they are producing the language, perhaps.
Okay, thank you. Osvaldo, what about the second question? What concrete benefits does active learning bring to the classroom? I don't think Osvaldo is there. You can let us know. Okay, so what concrete benefits does active learning bring to the classroom? I think it's better to close breakout rooms. I don't know how many people are here. And I'm going to make you guys work, because active learning is about that. It's about handing on activities. So feel free to turn the microphones on and participate, okay? So let me know in the chat box, what do you think the benefits of active learning bring to the classroom?
Well, I'm also moving from one room to another, Fabian. However, well, I think so that the first part is motivation, because it definitely improves how you feel with the language. Because not many of our students feel competent, and this is what most of us want to have when we are definitely learning a new language, and that becomes difficult. So do you think is that?
Thank you, Andres. Yeah, it's a very valid opinion. And in fact, as we can see here, the benefits are those. It helps information retention. It improves our communication skills. There are higher level of thinking skills, teamwork, as you mentioned, motivation. Now, the next question is, what strategies can help me implement active learning methodology in the classroom? You can let me know in the chat box. I see Hernan is here. So what's your opinion about it? How can I implement active learning in the classroom?
Letting the students do the majority of the work, probably in groups, giving them specific roles.
Exactly. So yeah, getting students involved in goal setting and focusing on skill development. Carrie was talking about fluency over accuracy. So when we work on skills, it is important, especially when students have started to learn a language, to give more priority to fluency over accuracy. And as a result, we will be doing no more than 75% of decision making. It is the students who will be taking over the role on their own learning. Now, why should I do it? You mentioned motivation. Students are exposed to alternative problem-solving strategies. These activities are less intimidating. Somebody was saying that students might feel less confident or shy when they want to speak. So when we do these kind of active learning activities, we're going to find out that the activities themselves are less intimidating for them. And where can I do it? Well, through learning centers. We're going to use learning centers in order to focus over one skill, break it down, and help students gain fluency and, in some cases, accuracy too. We have students who are weak, and those students might need to gain confidence when doing the activities working in group, while other students, the stronger students, might need to expand on those skills. So the idea of putting them together is for the weaker students to learn from their peers. And of course, those stronger learners will be expanding on their knowledge and mastery of the language. The average retention skill, okay, the average retention rate is a term coined by marketing, but it is applied in education to talk about what are the sort of activities that encourage retention and for students to keep using what they have seen in class. Someone is working here on the Jamboard and telling us that lecture is probably one of the activities that contribute less to retention. For that reason, when we start delivering our lessons and we want to teach our classes, it is important that we help our students to practice by doing, to teach others, to teach among themselves, to do hands-on activities like the ones that we will do today, doing demonstrations, and that is going to help them a lot. There are, of course, activities that we have to do in the classroom and out of the classroom in order to help our students to work on skills. So I'm going to share this activity with you here on the screen. Yeah, I have people saying students feel motivated by doing different things without realizing it. They speak and participate. That's right. Thank you, Stefano. Cooperative learning, says Daniela. That's right. All activities that the students can interact, like role playing, says Ines. Yeah, and Patricio says by involving students in problem solving situations. Yeah, so this is something that we already know. And okay, so let me know, guys, what do you think? What activities can be done in a school to promote active learning? Okay, I have my first ideas here. Just feel free to shout a name. Group discussion, what do you think? Is it in the classroom or out of the classroom? Where can we do it?
In school.
In a school.
All right, good. What about learning centers? The one that we will see today.
In a school.
Case studies.
Also.
School. All right. Visual record.
Out.
All right.
School.
Sharing experiences.
Where do you want? Yeah, it depends.
Giving directions in a foreign language.
Out of school.
Out.
Yeah.
Place.
In
All right. Group projects.
In
School.
In school.
But also out of school.
All right. There are different opinions. We're gonna see in a while. Using equipment.
both.
Sí, hay como, mira,
Out of
Physical
se
work.
puede, en caso
Practical work.
o sea, se puede con su
Okay. What about practical work?
Both of them.
Both.
Both of them. If you had to choose one, which is more priority over the other?
Out.
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 All right.
Out of school.
Service.
Out.
Out of school.
Out.
Using television and movies.
Out of school.
in,
Out.
Competitions.
In.
In.
And
Out.
In.
making posters and brochures.
In.
In school.
Okay, let's take a
In.
quick look. Yeah. So perhaps considering that practical work should be guided by the teacher and it is hands-on, it is much better when we do it in a school, while competitions are probably thought when you have these inter-school activities like spelling bees, poetry contests, etc. So here we have an idea of the activities we can do to promote active learning, and learning centers are the ones we will do in a school. Now, just to clarify something that you mentioned, and before we get hands-on on, just let me share my screen here. So before we get hands-on on the learning centers, just let's consolidate that the principles of active learning play an active role in all the stages of the learning process. We participate in the decision-making more than the students, but we do 50% less talking. It is the students who talk, and they are the ones who own their own learning. What are the advantages? Well, you mentioned exposure to alternative problem-solving strategies. It is less intimidating. Students learn best when they teach, while the benefits of active learning are skill development. Learners feel more committed to doing the activities, and it increases motivation. Definitely, lecture is what promotes less active learning, while teaching others or immediate use of learning when helping each other is going to help students a lot. So keep in mind that when we encourage students to work in groups and we put them together, probably those students who are stronger will be teaching the ones who are weaker, and in that way, both gain. So let's take a look at how learning centers work. Here I have 3 different learning centers, but all of them are focused on pronunciation. What I have designed here, if we click on the first link, just let me close some windows here. This is Learning Center number 1. So Learning Center number 1 is about pronunciation. The idea is for students to work simultaneously. They are independent and they decide where to work. Some might decide to start with Learning Center number 2, while others might start with the third activity in Learning Center number 3. But once they are here, if they use the first link, they will be working on stress patterns. So the jumpers here. So stress patterns, right? How many syllables? One syllable, one stress, right? Please enter the link if you are there. I see there are 3 people already there. Start dragging the words to the correct category. Yeah, feel free to do it. While you work on that one, and I'll be back with you guys for the ones who want to work on stress patterns, we have a second activity here. In this activity, you go through these slides 1 to 6 and solve the activities there. Let's take a peek at what's happening here. So the second activity in Learning Center number 2 is focused on individual sounds, the difference between the ch and the sh sound. That is why we have these pictures here to remind the students something that they already saw in class, the difference, what sound we make when the students sneeze. They are ch, ch. And how do we show people? Sh, sh. We have 2 different types of sounds. And now this is how we represent these sounds. In the next activity, what you have to do is to decide which words are the ones on the left and which words in the second list have the sound. If you want to work there, you can feel free to go there. Some students might be interested in working on individual sounds, stress patterns, but others might want to say, I want to speak more. I want to do something. Well, here I have an activity where students start working on vocabulary related to the kitchen, but there is one word which doesn't have to do with it. So let's do this activity together. What is it?
Ladybug.
Oh, very good. Brilliant. What about the next one?
Can of soup.
Can of soup.
Exactly. So remember, while there is a group of students working in Learning Center number 1, another group will be working here, coming up with the vocabulary that they will need in order to complete the speaking task. In this speaking task, as you can see here in the instruction, we will divide the class, or the group will subdivide into teams. Team A will have this picture of the kitchen, and Team B has the second picture. And the idea for them is to spot the differences. So they will be working on vocabulary like, oh, there is a toaster next to the can of soup. Is there a toaster in your picture? And the other student will have to reply, I see a dog. Is there a dog in your picture? No, there isn't. Yes, there is. So the idea is to make the activity interactive. If the students don't want to work on that activity, they can choose task number 2, where they will categorize functional language, expressions to say I like, I don't like. So here we have. And I'm pretty sure there are people also doing stress patterns here. Yeah, feel free to work and let me your answers there. So in this activity, the students need to remember what expressions help me express likes, dislikes, and ask for preferences. What about this one? I enjoy. Is it like, dislike, or I am asking?
Like.
Like the first one.
Like.
I can't stand.
Dislike.
Second one.
Do you
Like.
enjoy?
Like.
Like.
Question like. Number 3.
Question, good. I can't get enough of.
Number 2, dislike.
Dislike.
Have different opinions, right? Let's let's take a peek here. And yeah, those answers are correct. But the idea for the students is to first have the language exponents they need so that they can complete the real task. In this task, they have different pictures and 2 questions, which is pretty similar to Cambridge exams. Do you like this form of spending free time? So students need to take a look at the picture and discuss. While the students are discussing, as a teacher, I am walking around the breakout rooms, listening to them, picking or collecting samples of positive language and language mistakes for delayed correction. And as you can see here on the left, there are enough questions for them to discuss. Another activity that they can try is this one from Learning Center number 3, when they have to role play a conversation ordering pizza.
Want to order pizza by phone? Do it me. I'm red, you're green. Hello, this is a pizza place. How can I help you? Okay, we have pepperoni, margarita, and Hawaiian pizza, which is the one that comes with pineapple on top. Perfect. Medium, large, extra large size?
Medium.
Thin or thick crust?
Thin crust, please.
Cash or credit
I'll pay
card?
by debit card.
Perfect. Would you like anything else?
Large regular Coke, no ice, please.
Awesome. That's $12.99. And your order will be ready in 25 minutes.
Okay, great.
Enjoy your meal.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Right, so that activity is from Learning Center number 3, where students have different options like ordering pizza, being at the supermarket, buying coffee, or being in a job interview. I teach adults, so I always include these sort of activities where they have to role play these conversations. Now that they have practiced, they can also use, or they can also develop or integrate other skills like reading. In this activity, students will read the speaking cards with different situations. In this speaking card, the student is the headmaster in a school. There was a problem with one of the students who went against the rules, and despite the warnings, the student has not changed her attitude. So the headmaster was or had to make a decision, which of course maddened the student. There are some suggested ideas for the student to role play, while the other student in speaking card B is that student who broke the rules. So the situation is there, the students need to read the speaking cards, understand and get the gist and details of the situation before role playing. And of course, that is connected to the activities they are doing in breakout rooms too. So while the students are doing all these activities, as a teacher, I'm walking around the breakout rooms, monitoring their language. And at the end, we do some delayed correction. They are given sentences, they have to correct themselves, helping each other, aspects related to pronunciation, aspects related to functional language. And at the end, when the activity is done, they can give me feedback on how they felt with the learning centers. If they feel confident about using vocabulary and expressions studied in class, if they felt good working with their classmates, probably telling me something about their own attitude in class, and writing some comments or questions for improving learning centers in another opportunity. There is always a link for students to answer questions, to let me know their opinion about what they're doing in the learning centers, how they're feeling, and a quiz for me to collect at first sight how they did in the learning centers.
Yeah.
Another thing I do, or that you can do, is to use tools like Telegram, which is really useful, or simply an email for students to send activities to you. If they are working in this role play with the video, they can record themselves. They can share that recording with you as a voice note on Telegram, and you will be listening to the student speaking. And then assessment is also important. So as I collect the different tasks, I can decide, yeah, my student can control individual sounds, my student uses adjacent pairs effectively, or the interaction patterns are well used, so I give the student a 1. If not, he gets a 0, and that gives me an idea what their progress in the skill is. But also, I have an average of the progress of those students in each skill as a group, as a class. So, I have some comments here in the chat box. But I would like to hear your questions now. Let's take a look at the stress patterns here. Oh, you are not working here, but I expected you guys or someone to try this activity. You can try them. And as you can see here, each room or each slide has a different room. The idea was to work in breakout rooms for you to connect and do the activities yourselves. And of course, at the end, in a slide, the last slide, you can find the answer. Well, let me just show it to you here. Oh, here it is. So when students finish, if you consider it important, it is always useful to leave the answer key for them to work. And if they finish quick, okay, they finish quickly, you can just add something extra for them to work. Add 5 more words to each category. So that has to do more with their production of language and their ability to identify stress patterns. I have a question here. What is the most difficult part in working with a student with learning centers? Well, I would say that putting it all together the first time you do it, because it takes time. You have to create the links, be very organized so that you don't get confused with the activities. It is much better to create folders in Google Drive so that all the students will have access to all the activities at the same time. And of course, the next time that you try learning centers, you don't need to put it all together again, but simply make some changes and adjustments based on the feedback that the students themselves are giving you. And remember that the following group, the next level, the next school year, you will receive the same sort of students. So at the end of the day, that information is going to be really useful for you to simply make adjustments and improve your learning centers. Florinda Calderon says, I think that this strategy involves some amount of students working together during class, but may also involve individual work. Yes, that is true. As I show you here in this activity, the students will be working individually because they have to role play the conversation using the video. But the idea is for them to feel confident with what they're doing and engaged in the activity. However, when they go through the speaking cards, which is the second activity in the same learning center, they have to interact with their classroom, with their classmates, sorry, because the idea is for them to feel that level of confidence interacting with other people. One of the things that we don't want the students to feel is shy. So the more opportunities I give my students to interact with different people, the more confident they will feel. Let me see if I have questions from YouTube. Yeah, someone was telling me that the exercise is for reading. Yeah, the idea is to integrate skills. The students are not really concentrating their work on reading, but they need to understand the situation and the suggested ideas in order to be able to produce a language. So the situation is simply stating what's happening, what the problem is, but it is the student who decides and plays the role. By experience, my students have done these A2 levels, B1s, some strong A1s. And when they do these situation-related activities, they start like taking over the role and feeling, yeah, I am the director, so you have to follow the rules. And they try to find a language. And remember that learning also comes from needs. When we feel the need to say something, we will try to find the language to say it. And that is the moment when I will be monitoring the activity. And if I notice that the student has problems to come up with the right language, in the delayed correction stage, I will be providing the students with that language, or there will be other students helping that weaker student. Exactly. I have Alexandra Santa Cruz here in YouTube saying that that depends on the skill you like to focus, and that is absolutely right. As you can see, these learning centers focus on developing speaking skills. You can choose to develop writing, reading, but all the activities should be related to the same skill in order to consolidate the student's performance. Yeah, I have some people telling me that they need permission to access. Yeah, I'm sorry, but you can just look for the people on YouTube. You can just take a look at the activities, but I promise I will activate the editing. But you can also download the material. Feel free to do it. Someone here mentions, Paula Velasco says, task-based practice. Yeah, it has to do with completing some tasks, especially when students have to produce language in groups, like role-playing, and there is a task here for them in this activity here called Ogoniont. What they have to do is to read different problems shared by people. So in this Agoniant gallery, they will go through the gallery reading different problems, and then they have to decide which problem was the worst. Once they have decided that, they will work in groups, and of course they have to compare their answers and discuss ideas and create a new group ranking. In that way, we are helping stronger students to take more responsibility for what they are doing, and the activity is really engaging. So here we have those people, Sad Boy, for example, telling us that he is a victim of bullying in school, and his parents don't believe what he says. That is the situation basically here. Here we have another person saying that her daughter is ill, but also there are other family problems, especially her mother who's got cancer. So they have to decide which situation is worse, do the ranking, and then compare those activities and create the rankings. The idea for them to use here is expressions of agreement, disagreement, to contribute with ideas taken from the readings. The amount of students in one classroom, says Ines, well, I would say that it is especially designed for large groups, because as I said before, you don't tell the students where to go. It is them who decide which activities to do, which learning centers to visit. And that will give you the opportunity to see how they're doing and how independent they feel in order to choose an activity. Okay, so let me just share my screen once again. So yeah, just to summarize, learning centers should be focused on one skill at a time. They should encourage cooperative work. Of course, there are tasks where they start working individually, but at the end, they will be back together and work as a team. You always provide them with hands-on activities. These activities are suited to their needs and styles. As you can see here, there are students who are more visual, so they are dragging the words into sentence patterns. There are others who are more kinesthetical, so they can start with the videos. And after they have finished the activities, we will be helping them increase retention, promoting active learning, which is the goal, and create a positive environment. So that is what I've prepared for you. I want to thank you very much for the space, for the invitation. As I said before, if you want to ask more questions, there is a group on Telegram. I can keep answering your questions in that group. And you can also scan this code where you can find my contact information, and I will be very happy to reply and be in contact with you. The idea is to work together and learn together. I've always believed that the only way to help our students in Ecuador improve their level of English is by working as a team. Wherever we are, either in public or private areas, we should try to team together in order to help our students and gain confidence and, of course, mastery of the language. Thank you very much.
My dear Fabian, definitely you have taught us the power of technology actually in service, right?
Well, yeah, the idea is, and I've always believed that technology helps. It is not everything. I started using blogs in 2006, and I love technology, but it's only a part of what you need to do. As you saw here, I was not using fancy websites. It was just a couple of links to files on Google Drive, activities on Jamboard. So the idea is that if you are not tech savvy, start with little things, try to master those websites, try to master those apps, and then try another thing. But try it. What is important is that you take the plunge and do it.
So one of the questions mentioned there, it was, how can you start one learning center like that? Mm-hmm. Could you give us some tips to make it up? Because in your experience, definitely you have a kind of background in order to say, well, first you should do this, right?
Yeah, I would say start with a group. Take a group and work with that group as a pilot. See how things go and make adjustments. The following level, the following year, you can implement learning centers with different groups. In that way, you will feel less overwhelmed. And of course, you will also gain expertise in working with learning centers, especially in this online environment, which has been really challenging for everyone. As I was talking with a friend the other day, and we said, yeah, this whole thing was unexpected and we were not prepared for such a big change. But now we know how things go and we should try to keep preparing because we don't know what the future brings. So it is always important to start trying an app, a website, and incorporating it in the classroom. Don't feel disheartened by failure. If that website, if that app doesn't work as you planned, just get your students' feedback, make adjustments, and try again if you feel it's gonna succeed. Talk to other people, go to seminars, learn how other people do it, and try it. And I am completely sure that you will succeed and you will come up with even better ideas. The younger generations have been doing fantastic things on the internet. So compared to what I tried to share today, I'm pretty sure there are people coming up with much better ideas. But let's try. Let's take the first step.
Thanks. So Fabian, would you mind telling us what about the questionnaire people involved in that Congress should do, please?
Of course. Here, just let me stop sharing my screen. We have been working with Zoom for such a long time and I still have problems to stop sharing the screen. But here, if you go to your handouts, the ones that you received, there is a link here at the end in Activity D. If you open that one, it will take you to the Google form. And that Google form has 5 questions for you. 4 of them are multiple choice questions. You just need to leave your name, of course, the place where you're working or where you are from. And the first question says, when implementing learning centers, you should, and just choose one option there. You have 3 more questions, and the last question is more open because I would like to read your opinions about how you would incorporate learning centers to the reality of your classroom. Because it is true that not all students have access to technology, not others have access to technology or are not tech savvy. So it is important that we try to adapt this to our reality. I see that Evelyn, you raise your hand.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Fabian. Excellent presentation. Just to remind the participants that they can also go directly to our link for the Congress. And there I would like to share, but I cannot do it right now. And then you can also find the questionnaire. So if they want, they can also go to our link and they go to the workshop activities that we have been telling them that all the activities for the workshops are already here. So they can come here and they can complete the questionnaire. Basically, the same questionnaire that you have, it is also here. It is inserted here. Just that. And also the attendance link, we already sent it for the 2 o'clock. So I hope the majority of you already enter your names and your ID number. That's it. Thank you very much, Fabian.
So again, thank you very much for the invitation. It was really nice to share these experiences with you. And hopefully I'll see you in the next opportunity. Thank you again, and I wish you the best of success in this Congress for everyone.
Thank you so much, Fabian. And so this was Fabian Chavez from Education Fest Ecuador, presenting us that definitely entertaining, keep it simple, right? The way to teach. So guys, in the following 5 minutes, we will start with our next presentation. So keep with us. Don't go. In 5 minutes, we come back.
El Instituto Académico de Idiomas de la Universidad Central presenta la segunda edición del Congreso Innovative and Intercultural Languages Teaching Approaches, un espacio para socializar tendencias y prácticas relacionadas a la innovación e interculturalidad aplicables a la enseñanza de lenguas. Entre varios de nuestros temas tenemos la educación en tiempos de COVID-2019, enfoques actuales de la enseñanza de idiomas y muchos temas más. Los esperamos el 10, 11 y 12 de noviembre del 2021. Este evento lo organiza el Instituto Académico de Idiomas con el respaldo de Revista Científica Cronos y está avalado por la Dirección de Desarrollo Académico de la Universidad Central del Ecuador. Los esperamos. Bienvenidos todos.
Welcome.
Ali Shamushka.
Bienvenue.
Benvenuto. Jornada.
Thank you so much. And it's time to present our next speaker. It's an honor for Instituto Académico de Idiomas to present Professor Andrés Rodríguez. He comes from Universidad Agraria del Ecuador, and he has based a topic about post-pandemic online teaching approach and hybrid teaching approach. A couple of data for you to know. Andrés is an English teacher, and he has been working as that for 10 years in different Ecuadorian institutions. He has participated in the International TESOL course in the Kansas State University. Also, he has participated as an English training TESOL methodology course awarded by the American Embassy in the 2019. And Andrés lately has focused on doing action research since 2017. So this is just a couple of information, and it's a pleasure for us, Andrés, to invite you in this seminar. The topic is post-pandemic online teaching approach and hybrid teaching approach. It's a pleasure for us. Andres, very welcome.
Hi, it's a pleasure for me to be here. Master Andres, thank you so much for this invitation. To the staff of the organizers of this event. It's my second time in this innovative Congress in Universidad Central, so it's an immense satisfaction to be part, no, of a group of professors that we try to contribute to the EFL community with our work and also with things that we consider that are very valuable for our classrooms, especially in this digital area. So, well, why the topic? Why I chose this topic, post-pandemic online teaching approach and hybrid teaching approach? Well, everybody knows that pandemic time and during the time that it lasted for 1 year, for almost 1 year and more, the world have completely changed, and the way of education, the way we see the world have already transformed our perspective. So education itself has already changed, and many people were not ready to start this new challenge. Even though professors in some universities around the world, they have been working with some online courses, hybrid courses in the United States and other developing countries, but the world, the population of the world, most of the people were not ready to start. It was challenging, but it was like it's more than an obligation. Many people felt that that was necessary to continue studying and never stop. So during the pandemic, we observed that online teaching or the synchronic classes have pros and cons. No? So they have a positive effect and they have something that we need to improve, because there are some myths about online teaching and learning. And so the topic that I'm going to share with you has some limitations, because the post-pandemic methods can vary from places to places, public places, from regions, different regions in our country. Local contexts are totally different. So it was my inspiration to talk about this topic, because as many educators, we changed our mindset, and now we saw the results that we can probably say that they can be good, but occasionally they cannot be so good. But it depends on the way that we have been working with the resources or not, or we didn't have the resources enough. In this moment, I'm going to share with you my slides, and I will talk about it. Thank you so much. Okay, so first of all, as I mentioned from the beginning, I'm an EFL teacher, and my experience and the area of my expertise is not only about a classroom or theoretical ideas to bring to my students. I would like to remark that when I had the opportunity to study abroad, it opened my mind, and it makes me feel that I had to contribute more for the education in my country. And I'm from Guayaquil. I belong to University Agraria, and part of my research was done in these last years, from 2017 to this last year. I'm currently teaching in the Faculty of Pedagogy of National Languages and International Language. So for me, it is necessary contributed. Okay, first of all, I want you to tell you that this is not only a monologue. I would like you can intervene and participate. You can raise your hand or you can write in the chat box, please. So, dear audience, the ones who are viewing me from YouTube and the other people who are in this virtual scenario, I want to ask you this question. What is asynchronous class for you? You can read both options. The one you see allows you to attend class virtually, each week with instructor and classmates, or the second option. Okay, so I would like to start first with and activate your prior knowledge with these ideas. No, what can you tell me, dear professors, dear colleagues, what do you know about asynchronous classes? What is your idea about asynchronous classes? What do you think it is? Okay, so maybe you can observe, okay, in this visual presentation, okay, and okay, I'm going to read in the chat. I see someone else is no real-time communication, okay. Yeah, so it doesn't mean that it's not effective, no. It means that some students or professionals, some people can't connect at the same time or in the moment that we are live, no? So the activity that students do not do in the real time. Yes, Monica, I completely agree with you. And Patricio Serrano, I completely agree with you too. So both of your ideas match with the criteria of asynchronous classes. So, for example, videos, when we teachers upload videos with tutorials for our students that they contain instruction, they are not on their own pace or their own time. They can virtually connect, but they are not in the same time. So asynchronous class brings the benefit that they can connect, not necessarily in that moment, but they can do it later. Later on, they can open their platform and see the teacher's videos or instructions for when professors send assignments in the platforms. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to move forward to my next slide. What is blended learning? So, what ideas comes to your mind about blended learning? What do you know about it? How can we define it? Okay. There are some questions that comes to my mind in this moment. If we have already used blended learning before or not, or we know what is blended learning. What do you think it is? Blended learning according to your experience, no? Well, before pandemic, okay, I mean 2 years ago or 3 years ago, in many institutions around the world and here in our country, I remember in that time I was working in a private institute in a public Tecnológico Superior, okay? We were working with blended learning. So there are the combination of autonomous hours where the students connect 50% of the time and the other 50% are the classroom learning. But something that we need to precise is that the classroom learning is not only about teaching. Yeah, it's more about that assignments, homework, or some things that the professor sends to the students, no, to present something. No. Okay, Monica, thank you so much. Okay, yeah. So in most cases, have also been affected with some limitations with the problem with the technology or when the students don't have their cell phone or no matter what cell phone they have, but the internet connection is too low or there are some limitations, it affects dramatically to this process of synchronic or asynchronic. So in blended learning, we can also say that in a research that we made in 2 years ago, according to the surveys, many students, they didn't want to keep studying in blended learning because first, that they have some problems with the internet connection, and another one that they prefer the presence of the professor or the English instructor in the classroom. Okay, and I conveyed and I go beyond to that idea because it's necessary the presence of the professor in the classroom in order to monitor the classroom, to observe, okay, the things that happen around it, the students' behavior, a student's reaction when the students say something or they don't want to speak English. So it is very important that the professors, they will be present in that moment. So blended learning offers you that positive scenario to bring you in the classroom, but at the same time, students, they become autonomous because they complete their time opening their laptop and comes into the platform to keep studying, to keep learning. So I think that's important that I try to not to familiarize, try to remark these concepts, okay? Because in education, we normally try to use some terminologies or some expressions that we constantly hear, we constantly apply them in classrooms. Occasionally, we know what do they do because that's our jobs, okay? As educators, we use it every time, but we need to know the theoretical frame, okay? The basics of this, the theory that makes our practice work. Thank you so much. I will go to the next presentation. So we go ahead now to what is a hybrid course like, no? So from the beginning, we mentioned some terms about hybrid classes, blended learning, asynchronic classes, and synchronic classes, and you have already defined it very well. So now that we know those terms, we can know exactly what is a hybrid course. No, what is a hybrid course? No, when we teach languages, especially to be precise, English. Okay, so how are we working in these days? In most cases, universities try to use the hybrid classes. Few of them they maintain their online sessions. They 100% online classes, but the hybrid courses keeps the students, they return or they come back to classrooms. So we need to be ready to combine both. No, as educators, we need to adapt to those changes. No, so first of all, we need to know how can we adapt to these changes, because the post-pandemic time, it doesn't mean that the pandemic period is not finished, because we don't know. But we as educators change our mind, and we need to take the best we learn, okay, from this period of time and combine with the things that we learned before. Okay, so now we are different from the beginning. We are not the same persons, because the same people, because the hybrid course offers that we need to be more open-minded in the way we work with our students. Okay, so in this moment, I want you to share quantitative data, statistically, what happened during before in the previous months of the pandemic in the last year, during the last year in the 2020. So what happened in the world? So homeschooling and some hybrid courses or blended learning were applied in different college or universities around the world. In the United States, okay, I will illustrate that point with what happened in the United States. As we know, many schools close around the world and many people stay home, but education never stopped because it was a big opportunity for different universities to open hybrid online courses in order to make the people keep studying more. For example, master's degree, PhD, post before the student who studied their major, okay, the career in the university, okay, they complete their studies in a online education. So education never stopped, and this statistical bar reflects and shows, for example, what happened during this month, during February to March. Okay, so if you can interpret this rather, you will see that the number of people were increasing. They never stop. Okay, so you stay home, you were close at home, but you keep studying, and it was an opportunity for people to study. So it's a benefit that online education brings to many people. So this is a great impact of virtual classes. Okay, so I will remark, obviously, that in our local context, in our country, and in Latin America in general, it didn't happen the same. Results show that online education in our country, they didn't have the same results as it happened in other countries. For example, in the United States, there were some limitations. There were some challenging that many people couldn't connect, or they suffer internet connection. Even professors, even teachers in high schools, they couldn't connect, and we would say that it was not totally good, but it's not bad. So it depends of the context or the latitude, how it is approached, no? So online teaching pedagogy. So in the moment that they observed that many people were close at home and they were studying and they take advantage of the time of finishing their studies, okay, the online pedagogy, okay, was based in some principles of education, okay. For example, some of the authors or the pedagogies that they share with us and contributed to our education, for example, the constructivism, the cooperative learning, they can also be applied in the online classes, not only in the face-to-face classroom, no? So you will ask some questions about how can we use constructivism in a online class. I think those questions are very good, and we are going to answer through when I present more slides, okay? So online teaching pedagogy is not only related to the way that we approach the education, no? So different professors, diversity of professors create different activities or scenario for students to motivate and encourage them. For example, in most cases, students, they don't feel good because obviously during the pandemic, emotionally, we suffered, and they were eager to study because they found it like a refugee emotionally. So we professors try to be more friendly, to be friendlier with them and nicer with the creation of some activities that or scenarios, for example, discussion topics, okay, where the students can bring their ideas and we can listen to them effectively, okay? So it was part of our emotional and resilient way to support our students, no? So humanism also transformed the way we change our mindset to support our students in this pandemic and obviously post-pandemic period of time. So the post-pandemic, in the pandemic and the post-pandemic, the online teaching, okay, has impacts in education that offer some benefits to our students, okay? When I say benefits, I'm not referring only to the learning. I'm obviously talking about to the real life. For example, when we design courses for discussion, okay, our students share their ideas, so they can become more meta learners. So how can we define meta learners? The ones that can use reflection and other mental process like the analysis, comparison, and that's good because it benefits the students for real life activities. Courses are learning center, so activities that are beneficial for students to produce more. In case of teaching English, no? For example, there are some tutorials or activities in order to develop skills that produce a positive effects in the students that when they are learning the language, okay? So, and some applications from Zoom and other meeting personal people, it benefits the students, especially when they are in small groups, because they can practice the speaking and they can interact with each other. And a professor can monitor and go around classrooms, okay, online classrooms, in order to support students and see what is happening in the virtual classroom. So maybe some professors don't know, but we are doing research when we do it, because we are monitoring and we can obtain some data from it, okay? Obviously, as a part of our role model, we are leaders with our students because we can support them, okay? And emotionally, okay, not only in the pedagogy or not only in methodology or in the teaching, so we can support them, okay, emotionally. So that's important, the presence of the role model of the teacher in that virtual scenario. Okay. In one of the last slides, I mentioned that practice is supported by theory. Yes, it's necessary that we teachers know why, and the reason why we use an activity. Okay, why is it for? If we want that our students achieve in different skills, what methods we use, okay? How can we approach? Who are we going to support? So those questions are related to research questions. So even though we do not use research questions, we need to keep in mind that we can use those post-pandemic pedagogy theoretical frames. For example, behaviorism. Many people questioned this theory because they say, no, this is an old-fashioned theory. This is repetition, drills. No. Behaviorism, we can combine different approaches that can benefit in the way that we in the way that we need to support our students and see the results. For example, how can we use repetition drills? For example, in the virtual classrooms, when we upload some videos or tutorials, students observe the vocabulary, the words, the new vocabulary content, and they acquire naturally because they're listening to the pronunciation, okay? They are repeating some patterns. They need to repeat it, okay? So this is based on theories, okay, that we teachers need to know. As I said before, in virtual classrooms, for example, the tutorials, when you upload for your students when they are beginners or when they are in the process of becoming A1 to A1-2, okay, so they still need to practice more activities in order to repeat and acquire some words. So how can we do it? For example, there are some activities, for example, game-based activities. This is for not only for vocabulary. If we want to acquire communicative grammar or other skills, we can do it. It depends, for example, during a speaking classes, for example, what we want to measure. What do we want to measure? If we want to measure fluency or we want to measure pronunciation, okay? So we can use constructive and regular feedback to motivate our students to keep studying, no? Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Andres, for the reminder. So in this part, I will show you the learning theories, no, in virtual classes. So, and those are very important in order to have an effective approach to our students, no. As I mentioned before, if our students are in the process of being beginners and to be intermediate, we can use different approach. For example, we can use constructivism or cognitivism, okay? Cognitivism requires a lot of effort, a lot of knowledge, or a student has to be proficiency in the language first, no? In both language, in order to, for example, be able to understand lectures or use visual methods, because this is more about abstract. For example, in universities, in the different modules, when professors teach English, not as a second language, but English in, for for a specific purpose, no? Because it is in the curriculum, okay, of different careers, no? Engineering, medicine, okay? Students need to know the vocabulary and the technical terminology in order to understand these approaches, no? So I want you to show the evidence, and this is why, and then showing with you, for example, some of my work that I have been doing research in a cooperative learning classes. For example, Google Doc. Okay, in Google Doc, it is properly used for different ways. So you can observe at the same time, at the same pace, when the students are working in that moment. So you can introduce different topics or activities that motivate to the students, and they can do it in that moment. No? So no matter what level they are, if they are beginners or they are intermediate or they are higher intermediate or advanced, you can use this. No? So it's very common. So for writing assignments too, I can evidently want to show you this. For example, if you want to observe your students' writing development, you can use this in order to have a clear idea, okay, in order to maintain a friendly feedback to support to your students. No? So before I conclude this part in the writing assignment, I just want to claim the fact that all the things you do, my dear colleagues, okay, they have theoretical frames, okay, in order to support your practice. So theory makes practice because you need to support, okay, you need to know how to enhance your practice. And try to see what is the best, for example, for some evidence that a teacher, a professor can share with you, because not always it can be useful, no? So you can take the best, no? But not always they can be, you can expect the same results, no? You can be frustrated when you say, I want to apply this. I wanted to apply what you already shared with me, but I didn't get the same results. So we can question that, but we need to see what is our context, the level of our students, and evidently the language they use. No? So before we apply something, it's necessary that we need to be very sincere. Okay, how is our context before we apply something? No? And that's the reason why we need to know how to do research, no? As English teacher instructors. Thank you so much, and I expect this presentation can be beneficial for you, my dear colleagues. So as I said from the beginning, I send my greetings, and I say thank you for this invitation. Andres Rodriguez, I like to support, I like to support and contribute to the community, to the EFL community, with some workshops and webinars to the English teachers. So you can find me on Facebook or YouTube. So I will, with my open heart, and in order to support you. Thank you so much.
Dear Andres, thank you. Very rewarding, nice, quiet reflection about what's going on with the new phenomena, because the first one definitely was the COVID, but then that post-COVID definitely has given us different lessons about how education is evolving. Once and again, thank you, my dear Andres, for being here with us in our second Congress, and you, of course, for the second time there. Very welcome to have you in here. In case, guys, we have some additional questions, you are free to write them on in the different chats, and then we are gonna deliver them to our speaker in the following time. So just, I'm sorry because we are kind of short of time, and Evelyn had some important information before we go over the next.
Thank you very much, Andres. Thank you both, Andres Rodriguez and Andres Baldassari.
Thank you.
I have something important to tell you. This is our last session. It is really important. We have an excellent speaker. But I want to remind you that at 5 we're going to have a raffle, and we're going to have 2 people helping us with the raffle. One person is from Bestseller. He is going to offer us a free online course for English or different languages. So that is something, if you don't want to miss that, okay? And also from Studium, we are going to give a dictionary, English dictionary. So that is going to be at 5. So please stay here, and don't forget, we're going to send you the attendance link once again. This is for the last session in the afternoon. All right, that was it, Andres. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear Evelyn. And well, closing this first journey, which has been very regarding with interesting information and reflections, and definitely useful ideas for us as teachers, I'd like to introduce our last speaker from this afternoon. This is Professor Rocío Ortega. She's coming from Universidad de las Fuerzas Armadas, ESPE, and her topic is Integrating Technology, Challenges and Opportunities to Inspire English Language Learners. In addition, I'd like to give you a brief information about Rocío, which is she holds a master's degree in applied linguistics to language teaching. She has been working in the field of education for the past 36 years. She has been teacher's trainer on pedagogical skills to teachers of English from public sector at the Ministry of Education during 12 years. She currently serves as professors of subjects from master's programs as well as major. Her main research interest is English as a foreign language learning, methodologies, strategies, and assessment. So, dear Rocío Ortega, professor from ESPE, you are very welcome, and thank you very much for being here in the closure in our first day, second Congress. Rocío.
Thank you so much for your introduction, Andres. And I would like to say that I am pleased to be here, especially because I have met friends and colleagues. Thank you for inviting me. I would like to know if you can see my presentation, please.
Not yet.
Not yet. So I have a problem with the Zoom. I have a problem with compartir. Yeah, here we go. So thank you so much for the invitation, and that is my topic. Now, can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Okay, the topic that I have chosen is integrated technology, challenges and opportunities to inspire English language learners. And I have chosen this topic because of the pandemic, the COVID-19, the lockdown, and the virtual classroom that the teachers had to face was an event that affected us because we were not trained to use virtual classroom and technological tools to help our students. And we were not prepared to face in a good way this situation. So we had to learn in a very quickly, because our vocation is the most important to help our students. So the objective of this session is to introduce a range of multimedia tools and techniques that can be incorporated in EFL teaching to increase the students' interactions and engagement with learning. But why we have to use technology in EFL? So there are many authors that say that technology is a tool that can make teaching and learning process more effective and interesting and enjoyable for students. Erickson, for example, says that traditional models, it means the transmissional and the traditional way of teaching, are not challenging enough for work demands. As you know, technology and other aspects have changed very quickly in our lives, and education needs to have another curriculum that can produce a more profound intellectual and emotional engagement for learning. And Mishra and Cooler say that their researchers say that when the teachers integrate technology, it motivates the students' interest in the contents. So the technologies of communication and information can change the environment of the classroom, and the students have more access to the information. And Mayora says that technology might be one of the factors that affect the students' attitude positively. So when we have that the students have a positive attitude, learning can take place. But here we have a problem. To use technology in an effective way, teachers or educators in general have to be prepared, how to be trained, how to know how to use the technology. Other authors say that integrated English language learning and technology nowadays are inseparable aspects to transform the teaching and learning process. It means, as I said before, that the teacher has to know or has to be tech savvy, or in other words, they have to know digital literacy. And digital literacy is one of the 21st century skills. So as I said before, teachers shouldn't transmit information to the students because the students can get information from internet. So it's not necessary anymore that the teacher transmit information to the students. So our role as teachers has changed, and we need to be facilitators and help our students to develop the 21st century learning skills, and they are creativity, critical thinking, assertive communication, collaboration, and the digital literacy and problem solving as well. The learning outcome for this session is to be familiar with some technological tools to be used to develop the language skills and assessment. And here, before the before showing the technological tools, because this session is based on my experience, so I have applied the technological tools that I am going to mention, and I have seen that the students feel motivated and they enjoy the learning, and they have become independent learners. So before that, the questions are, does technology facilitate the attainment of course goals? So before you use a technological tool, you as teacher has to make yourself these questions. Are the teachers ready to work with technology? Is any training required? Does it serve the needs of teachers and students? Does it help teachers make more efficient use of class time? So you need to reflect on these questions. So the key is that it is the teacher, not the technology, who determines the quality of the learning that takes place in the classroom. So it means that pedagogy and technology have to be hand in hand. So what are the benefits of using technology in the classroom? According to the experts, the benefits are, number one, it promotes autonomous learning. When the students know how to use the technological tool and they feel motivated, they can be independent learners. Another one is that it motivates the students. So if the task that they have to do using that technological tools is motivating, the students are going to feel motivated using the technological tool to complete the task. Another one is that learners perceive technology is useful in the classroom. So they have seen teenagers, children, and the university students have perceived that technology is useful in their real lives and in the classroom as well. In addition, it can promote critical thinking, get students to work cooperatively, and meaningful and real-life task-based learning, and can facilitate cultural understanding. So these four depends on the teacher as well. If the teacher applies a technological tool, for example, Wiki, and the assignment is to write an essay in a cooperative way, obviously students are going to develop the critical thinking and the cooperative work and the meaningful and real-life task-based learning. And obviously, for example, if the student has to write a letter to a person who lives in Russia, for example, there could be a cultural understanding. So in a general way, the technological tools that I have used are, for example, the videos. The videos are a short video, for example, is an engaging way to develop the listening skill, to promote the critical thinking, and as a reinforcement of vocabulary, to pay attention to the grammar point that you are teaching, and comprehension or something that they are listening. This is applications in the iPods or tablets, and I have seen that children and teenagers enjoy some applications, and they could practice the vocabulary and the vocabulary, and when they practice the vocabulary, they have fun at the same time. This is another one. It is the name of this technological tool is Free Visual Field Trips, and it's an enjoyable way to absorb content. For example, in history or geography or something like that. As you know, the Ecuadorian curriculum is based on the CLIL approach. So CLIL means content, learning, integrated language, and content and language integrated learning. And if the content is related to geography, history, tourism, something like that, the students can use this technological tool and they can absorb the information in an easy way. So another one is the postcard. And in the postcard, the student can develop the listening skill, but at the same time, they can create a podcast and they could develop, again, the critical thinking, the teamwork, and the creativity, because they have to create something new. This is the web quest. It's another interesting tool, and it depends on the task that is assigned by the teacher to the students, and the students can develop the students can do research. The students can work in team. The students can develop, again, the critical thinking, and the students at the same time to get the English proficiency. And here we have the games. Games are a controversial topic, but if the teacher and the students use in a positive way, it's a good help for vocabulary and grammar and comprehension. So if we talk about the abilities, the speaking ability has many reasons, but I have selected 3. Why the teacher has to develop the speaking skill in the classroom. And here we have, when the students practice the speaking using these activities or other activities, they have in a safety of the classroom. It means that they don't feel so nervous, and they can learn in an easy way. So another reason is that the speaking activities provide feedback for both teachers and students. The teacher gives the feedbacks, and students can take advantage to correct the mistakes, but the teacher can realize if the approach or the method or the strategy or the technique that he or she is using is appropriate to develop the speaking. And another reason is when the students have more opportunities to activate the elements of the language that they are learning, is the use of these elements is more automatic. So before the pandemic, teachers used to use these activities: discussions, role plays, simulations, information gap activities, brainstorming, playing cards, storytelling, interviews, picture narrating, picture describing, story completion, etc. But there are some technological tools that can help the teacher to do the same in a virtual setting. One of the technological tools that I have used many times is the Voki. So the Voki is an online creative tool for expressing one's ideas personally in one's own voice and talking character. This is the talking character, and the other name is Avatar. And it gives chance to students as well as teachers to use different characters so as to make the communicative task more interesting. So I am going to give you an example. So this is the avatar, and the students can change the character, change the accessories, change the background, change the colors and record the voice. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Uy. Can you see my presentation, please?
No, Chito.
I have a problem again. So now?
Yes.
Can you see? Yeah, okay.
Yes,
So this is okay. Sorry. This is the Boki. This is my Boki, and now you are going to listen to me.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all. I would like to thank each one of you for joining this session. I feel great proud to say that this event has been organized to share with ESL teachers new tendencies and to promote teachers' participation. We are honored to have you all with us. Thank you so much.
So I have seen that the students feel very motivating, and the Boki has benefits for the students and for the teachers. Can you see my presentation again?
Nope.
No. No?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for the feedback. So, as I said before, Boki is good for teachers and for students. For teachers, for example, if they use Boki, they are integrating technology in the learning process. They can assign and track student performance. They can engage targeted presentations, and they can share the presentations with other teachers. And for students can develop their imagination, creativity, and take ownership. They can show knowledge and receive feedback from the teacher and feedback from their peers. And they can participate and collaborate in the learning, and they have an stimulating content taught by entertaining characters, as I said before. Another technological tool that is good in this case to work in groups, because the Boki is to give a presentation, to give a speech, so it's an individual work. And this is good to talk in pairs or to talk in groups. And it is good to develop the speaking ability, for example, in a forum. It helps one to record one's, they can listen to and listen to his own recording and have self-assessment or peer assessment. and they can listen to and comparing with other students and improve their speaking. It is good for the standardized and international exams. For example, in the CARE exam, we have 2 assignments, talk about yourself and answer some questions, and they could use this technological tool to prepare the CARE exam. And another one for speaking is the Flipgrid. It is a video discussion platform, and Grid is a community of learners, so the teacher can create a community of learners. The topic is a discussion starters or prompts, and students respond to the topics. For example, we are going to suppose that the topic is abortion, so the students are going to, the teacher is going to write a discussion starter or prompt, and the students are going to respond. The responses are recorded and uploaded videos by the students. So the students are going to record their voices and upload the video with the responses, and the replies enables the students to make an interactive discussion. So now in writing, but I don't know if I have enough time. Andres, could you help me?
Well, actually, we are over time.
Okay, so I would like to share with you some technological tools specifically for each of the skills, but it's not possible. So I'm going to go to finish. So the conclusion. The conclusion is that the teacher is who chooses the technological tool. Is the person who designs tasks and activities that facilitate active learning, prepares the students for them, raises the students' awareness of certain language points, and integrates technology with other aspects of the curriculum. It means that we need to focus on how teachers use technology, not just the technology alone. So the key to this is pedagogy. Theory, what is the meaning of pedagogy? Is the theory and practice of teaching, learning, and assessment, classroom management, and other aspects related to the theory and practice of teaching. So pedagogy and technology are together. So it's a pity to I don't have enough time to show more more uses of the technological tools that I have applied and my students have enjoyed and learned. That is what the teachers want. Thank you so much.
Oh, dear Rocio, thanks a lot for sharing. Definitely, you leave a door open, a wide door open, a wide gate where teachers can explore. And definitely, this is the message that you have left in here. Teachers should explore more and going beyond over and over again. Dear Rocio, thanks a lot for that marvelous presentation, and we definitely hope so to see here with us in a new edition.
Thank you, Andres. Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me. It's an honor for me to be in this kind of events, and congratulations for the organization. I know that this is a challenging activity to organize this kind of events. Thank you so much. Thank you, Andres, Evelyn, Andreita. Thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to introduce, we have a surprise at the end, actually. We have a raffle. And before that, I'd like to introduce the personnel from Studium. Am I right? I think so. So, good.
Hola, buenas tardes. Somos Conchita Martínez y Yasna Fadi, y a nombre de Librería Studium tenemos un maravilloso diccionario para la feria, para la rifa. Me equivoqué.
Pues muchísimas gracias. Como siempre, nuestros sponsors, recuerden que cada día, pues nosotros tendremos varias sorpresas y sin duda alguna, Yasna y Conchita nos sorprenderán. No sabemos si quizá el día de mañana o el último día estaremos sorteando el vehículo, no lo sabemos. Pues por allí nos sorprende Librería Estudio. Pues bien, o sea, eso quiere decir que sí. Eso quiere decir que sí, realmente.
Sí, es verdad.
Muchísimas gracias. Excelente el apoyo. Pues bien, Evelyn, si me previenes, el departamento técnico me parece que estaba justamente ya diseñando la aplicación.
Sí, en este momento con los participantes que enviaron el último link de asistencia están haciendo, vamos a rifar 2 premios. Uno nos va a ayudar Librería Studium, como nos dijeron, y también quiero dar la palabra a Diego Llanes, que nos está también colaborando de Bestseller, Ecuador. Diego.
Muchísimas gracias, muy buenas tardes con todos. Me alegro mucho poder compartir este momento y estoy a las órdenes, ¿sí? Entonces hoy igual vamos a hacer el sorteo de un curso de idiomas, puede ser para inglés, puede ser para francés o para italiano, de 3 meses, ¿ya? Cuando ya esté el ganador vamos a mostrarles de qué es lo que se trata, ¿sí? Ya.
Muy bien, muchísimas gracias a Bestseller también por hacerse presente con esta motivación a todos los asistentes de este segundo congreso organizado por el Instituto Académico de Idiomas y con el aval de la Dirección de Desarrollo Académico y nuestras autoridades de la Universidad Central del Ecuador, la primera universidad del Ecuador.
Si es que Freddy nos puede ayudar, son las personas que han hecho y las personas técnicas que han hecho el sorteo. Freddy.
Buenas tardes con todos. El primer sorteo salió favorecida a Mónica Raquel Tamayo.
Felicitaciones, Mónica Raquel. Mónica Raquel está para el primer premio que es de Librería Studium, ¿verdad?
Exactamente.
Correcto, muy bien, mi querida Mónica Raquel. Muchísimas gracias por participar en el evento y mire, tenemos ya como primer día, aparte de que hemos ganado en experiencia con la información que hemos recibido, pues también felicitaciones, mi estimada Mónica. Tenemos ya un premio más. Ahora sí, Freddy, vamos con el segundo premio de esta tarde.
El segundo tenemos a Nube Rocío Cel Quesada.
Muy bien, mi querida Nube, también espero que se encuentre justamente, esperemos que esté conectada a través de YouTube, al igual que Moni. Felicitaciones, se ha hecho acreedora al segundo premio de esta tarde, entregado por Bestseller Stores. Bestseller, cuéntanos un poquito en qué consiste ese segundo premio de esta primera jornada de nuestro Congreso.
No te escuchamos, Diego.
Ahí.
Ahí estamos, perfecto.
Ya. Entonces, este curso particular es muy interesante. Hemos seleccionado de algunas plataformas o cursos autónomos para aprender idiomas. Es único porque, como le reitero, hemos escogido ya que la propuesta de este curso va a ser que el ganador participe de 3 meses gratis, ¿ya? Seven Speaking es una plataforma muy conocida en la Unión Europea y es un método autónomo para aprender idiomas. Es muy interesante porque promueve un método de enseñanza-aprendizaje que es 4 veces más efectivo que el tradicional. ¿Sí? Aquí les voy a hacer la invitación para que puedan justificar cómo es que vamos a aprender 4 veces más rápido el idioma, ¿ya? Principalmente para la destreza de listening y speaking, ¿sí? Es decir, cuando queremos subir de un nivel B1, B2, normalmente nos toma unas 150 horas, ¿ya? Entonces acaba de ser 4 veces menos. Entonces aquí sí vamos a dar clic en el blog. Aquí hay un artículo ya de cómo aprendemos mucho más rápido los idiomas. Entonces, el curso, cuando ingresen al curso, el ganador va a tener, bueno, los participantes van a tener una prueba de nivel, van a tener acceso a exámenes internacionales para prepararse para el TOEIC, los TOEFL o para los Lingua Skills. Van a participar de una comunidad en estos 3 meses para desarrollo profesional, medicina, educación, etcétera, ¿ya? Y van a tener un tutor que puede chatear 20 minutos diarios. Entonces, el tutor, que es una persona real, les va a chatear 20 minutos diarios. Entonces, nada más para que conozcan por qué es tan efectivo el método, les voy a, en este otro minutito, compartir. Para aprender el idioma, lo que buscamos es que el estudiante tome interés y que sea personalizado de acuerdo a sus estilos de aprendizaje, ¿no es cierto? Entonces, este curso es único porque yo como estudiante actualizo mis gustos y preferencias, ¿sí? Entonces yo digo, yo quiero aprender italiano a través de historia, quiero aprender italiano a través de ciencia, ¿ya? Entonces, el sistema me va a sugerir lecciones ilimitadas, es decir, mientras yo más dedique tiempo al curso, voy a avanzar más. Entonces, mira, aprender idiomas a través de noticias de la BBC de Londres, a través de Steve Jobs, a través de Obama, este tipo de contenidos, ¿sí? Y para terminar, el método es muy efectivo. ¿Por qué? Porque aparte que va de acuerdo a los gustos y preferencias de la persona, del estudiante, busca una inmersión total del idioma. Entonces, lo que buscamos es adquirir mediante noticias reales del idioma, ¿sí?
3 men found.
Entonces aquí vamos a encontrar talleres de vocabulario, gramática, professional skills, todo esto viene incluido en el premio, ¿sí? Entonces es algo muy novedoso que queremos compartirles y en esto consiste el premio. Ya son 3 meses, nos dirían si quieren cargarles del inglés, también les vamos a cargar el francés, ¿ya? Para que aprendan y pongan en práctica los 2 idiomas. Sí, eso sería de mi parte. Muchas gracias.
Perfecto, muchísimas gracias por esa información y te agradecería muchísimo que por interno nos puedas ayudar con los datos para entregárselos a la ganadora de esta tarde y que puedan entrar directamente con ustedes para poder retirar ese premio.
Ya, gracias.
Muchísimas gracias a todos ustedes y con esta pequeña introducción queremos agradecer infinitamente la masiva presencia, el apoyo y la participación en este segundo congreso que pretende alcanzar esa meta tan anhelada, en especial en nuestro país, la democratización de la educación. Y cómo no, hacerlo mediante el perfeccionamiento docente. A todos ustedes quiero agradecerles esa presencia tan grata y los esperamos para el día de mañana iniciar nuestra segunda jornada con más información, muchas más experiencias y más novedades que nos ha dejado este evento llamado pandemia y pospandemia, sin duda alguna, que ha sido el tema central y que ha modificado muchos de los aspectos. Tal vez algo al final, Evelyn, que añadir.
Eso sería todo. Muchas gracias, compañeros, colegas. los que están en Zoom y los que están también en YouTube. Thank you so much, and I will see you tomorrow for our second part of the Congress at 8:30. Thank you.
Definitely, it's very regarding, and see you tomorrow.